Welcome to our Zoom class. Today our topic is redefining tricuspid valve. So the tricuspid valve is a neglected one because uh, it was considered less important than the other valve like mitral valve or aortic valve. But later on, uh, after further study, we have seen that the tricuspid valve is very much important. If we neglect it and if we do not address the problems of the tricuspid valve at the time of mitral valve surgery or aortic valve surgery, then the long-term effect will be very much deteriorating and it will affect the quality of life of the patient as well as the survival. So nowadays, the tricuspid valve has been given adequate importance. Now, first of all, we'll discuss the anatomy of the tricuspid valve. Normal tricuspid valve function depends on interaction between the fibrous annulus, the leaflets, the papillary muscle, body tenderly, and the adjacent right atrial and right ventricular myocardium. The valve consists of three leaflets named after their position. They are anterior, posterior, and septal. The normal valve area is in adult about 4 to 6 square centimeter. The variability of the papillary muscle is a normal characteristics of the tricuspid valve. They can vary in number and their number may vary between 2 to 9, but usually 2 or 3 papillary muscles can be seen. The anterior, which is the most prominent, and the posterior, which is often bifid or trifid. The septal papillary muscle is the least prominent and sometimes can even be absent, with multiple caudal attachment arising directly from the ventricular wall. So you see that the septal leaflet is somewhat displaced towards the apical side of the right ventricle, and in comparison to other leaflet like anterior or posterior leaflet. But if the displacement is more than 8 millimeter per square meter of the body surface area, then it gives a very likelihood of presence of Ebstein anomaly. Normal tricuspid valve diameter in adult is around 28 plus minus 5 millimeter as measured in the apical four-chamber view. Significant tricuspid annular dilatation is defined by a diastolic diameter of more than 21 millimeter per square meter of body surface area. That is usually more than 35 millimeter. If it is more than 35 millimeter, then we can uh, say that the tricuspid valve is dilated. And you see in this position, there is the anterior, posterior, and the septal leaflet, and there are high points and low point of attachment. These are the two yellow colored high points where the valve annulus is at the highest position towards the atrium, and this is the lowest point. It moves towards the ventricle. So these are the two lowest points, and whenever there is dilatation of the tricuspid valve, it occurs mainly on the anterior and the posterior leaflet. The septal leaflet is least affected in case of functional tricuspid regurgitation. So this is the normal anatomical picture. After opening of the right atrium, we see this is the anterior leaflet and this is the posterior leaflet and this is the septal leaflet. And this is the anteroposterior commissure and this is the anteroseptal commissure and this is the posterior septal commissure. And this is the most important area in any operation in the right atrium, particularly on the interatrial septum, or if it is very close to the tricuspid annulus, this anatomy must be remembered. And this is the area of triangle of Koch, and this is between the coronary sinus, and this is the tendon of Todaro, and this is the attachment of the septal leaflet of the tricuspid valve. So within this triangle, normally the atrioventricular node resides, and from the apex of the triangle, the bundle of his goes, and it remains in close proximity to the anteroseptal commissure area. So this is very vital point. We'll have to take care of this point at doing any type of surgery on the tricuspid valve. So whenever there is dilatation, it is already said already has been said that the anterior and the posterior leaflet area and the annulus is the most affected. And from this, uh, the normal configuration of the tricuspid annulus, it becomes more or less rounded or a little bit elliptical, so that the normal configuration of the tricuspid annulus is altered in case of functional tricuspid regurgitation due to enlargement of the posterior and the anterior part of the annulus. What are the common causes of tricuspid diseases? Infection like rheumatic fever or infective endocarditis may lead to tricuspid regurgitation. A dilated right ventricle from whatever cause causing the annulus of the tricuspid valve to enlarge may lead to tricuspid regurgitation, functional tricuspid regurgitation. Increased pressure through the tricuspid valve since with pulmonary hypertension. If this pulmonary hypertension may be a primary pulmonary hypertension or may be secondary to any other disease like aortic valve disease, mitral valve disease, or any other lung pathology, that may lead to dilatation of the tricuspid valve and ultimately tricuspid regurgitation. Less common causes include the congenital defects, carcinoid heart disease, tumor affecting this area, tricuspid valve prolapse, Ebstein anomaly, systemic lupus, and due to trauma. Tricuspid valve disease, if caused by rheumatic fever, is often combined with mitral and or aortic valve disease. Symptoms. The most common symptoms of tricuspid valve disease is irregular heart rhythm. Because of atrial enlargement, there is atrial fibrillation. There is easy fatigability, a fluttering discomfort in the neck. With severe disease, there may be symptoms of right heart failure, particularly enlargement of the liver leading to right abdominal pain, shortness of breath, swelling of the legs or abdomen with ascites and cold skin that may be present. Common types of tricuspid valve disease. Tricuspid valve regurgitation, which may be organic or functional, is very common. Uh, Tricuspid valve stenosis is also present. Tricuspid atresia may be present, and Ebstein anomaly is more or less common. So the tricuspid regurgitation in the majority of the cases, in about 75 to 90% of the cases, it is due to functional cause. And in 10 to 25% of the cases, it is due to organic cause. And the organic causes are prolapse or failed leaflet, endocarditis, congenital or iatrogenic, uh, due to lead passing through the tricuspid valve, pacemaker lead, or passing through the tricuspid valve. Endomyocardial biopsy procedure may traumatize and may damage the tricuspid valve. Some drugs, radiation, endomyocardial fibrosis, myxomatous degeneration of the tricuspid valve. There may be trauma, carcinoid due to cardiac catheterization, carcinoid syndrome, and in rheumatic fever, rheumatic diseases, the tricuspid valve is least affected. In functional causes, it comprises about 75 to 90% of the causes of tricuspid regurgitation, and this may be due to different causes like LV dysfunction, like ICM, that is ischemic cardiomyopathy, or dilated cardiomyopathy, left-sided heart disease causing mitral regurgitation, aortic stenosis or mitral stenosis, pulmonary hypertension due to any cause, uh, right ventricular myocardial dysfunction due to any cause, and atrial fibrillation. These all lead to tricuspid valve annular dilatation, RV dilatation and dysfunction, and tricuspid valve leaflet tethering. These all lead to tricuspid valve annular dilatation and functional tricuspid regurgitation. What are the diagnostic tests? These are the common armamentarium which are used to diagnose tricuspid valve disease, like electrocardiography, chest X-ray, echocardiography, transesophageal echocardiography, cardiac catheterization, which includes cardiac catheterization as well as coronary angiogram in certain cases, radionuclide scans, magnetic resonance imaging. These diagnostic procedures are used either singly or in combination to diagnose the tricuspid valve disease. there are some peculiarity or anatomical challenges that makes it less suitable for transcatheter tricuspid valve treatment because the valve, tricuspid valve annulus is very large. There is non-planar or elliptical annular shape. Fragility of the tricuspid annular tissue, which is very fragile and thinned out, and narrower annular shell in comparison to mitral annular shell. So the attached transcatheter valve cannot anchor very tightly and very strongly to the annulus. So there is chance of displacement or dislodgement. Non-calcified annulus in secondary tricuspid regurgitation. Even after tricuspid regurgitation, the valve annulus is not calcified, so it doesn't hold the anchoring substances of the transcatheter valve very well. Angulation in relation to the superior and inferior vena cava, which make it technically difficult to place a transcatheter valve. Trabeculated right ventricle is very much trabeculated. There are a lot of muscular glands and chordae tendineae, which makes it difficult to anchor the valve in the tricuspid annulus. There is thin right ventricular free wall, which may rupture at any point. Proximity of the atrioventricular node and the right bundle of his to the annulus, and the proximity of the right coronary artery to the annulus, and there is risk of coronary injury. These all make it very much vulnerable to injury, particularly during transcatheter placement of tricuspid valve. There is also other risks like risk of occluding the coronary sinus, the risk of occluding the vena cava and the outflow tract. Large number of patients with pacemaker or defibrillator lead may make it very difficult to place a transcatheter valve. There are a lot of transcatheter techniques. The current transcatheter approaches for treating tricuspid regurgitation can be grouped by the mechanism of action, including annuloplasty system, coaptation devices, leaflet devices, cable valve implantation, and tricuspid valve replacement. There are a lot of ways of treating. There are a lot of devices also. Trialign, percutaneous tricuspid valve, annuloplasty system. Trikins, tricuspid valve repair system, cardioband annuloplasty system, iris complete annuloplasty ring, MIA device, MitraClip system, which is also useful in case of tricuspid valve also. Pharma tricuspid repair system, Caval aortic valve implantation, gate tricuspid valve distance. So there are a lot of devices in the market which are again some are under trial. This can be used for treating the tricuspid valve diseases. These are the pictures of this. For example, this is just like MitraClip system. There is a spacer and the pedals are there which can attach this type of leaflet tissue and ultimately make it to some extent competent. And this is the percutaneous annuloplasty ring, and this is the percutaneous placement of the tricuspid valve. So we can replace the tricuspid valve by percutaneous route also, transcatheter route also. There are other ways of treating the functional tricuspid regurgitation. Sussar annuloplasty. The first one was the K procedure in 1965. K et al. Described for the first time a repair technique to treat secondary tricuspid regurgitation using 10 silk sussur placed through the posterior leaflet and the commissure, and the posterior leaflet is completely excluded, and the functional bicuspid valve is finally obtained. This is the bicuspidization. You can see from this figure there are a lot of interrupted stitches are placed, and sometimes placented stitches are also placed to make it competent, and ultimately it can be strengthened by another annuloplasty ring. But initially only the K procedure was used. It is preferable to put other sussurs to reinforce the first stitch. We can put other sussurs also. In addition, some variants, that is the positioning of some presets, could be performed. Devaga procedure, this is a very popular procedure and it has been modified into modified Devaga procedure. The Devaga annuloplasty has been proposed in case of tricuspid regurgitation, and it consists of reducing the area of tricuspid uh, annulus, and rapidly it became the most popular technique for the treatment of annular dilatation. It is generally performed by two 20-trichrone or 40-polypropylene running parallel sutures with 5 to 6 millimeter bites. Starting on the posterior, so we can start from here, posterior septal commissure through the endocardium and directed around the perimeter of the orifice in a counterclockwise direction, reaching the anteroseptal commissure. The other parallel suture is placed about 1 to 2 millimeter outside the previous one and finally tied together. In case of fragile endothelium which breaks up, in that case the suture could cut the annulus, and therefore some pressures may be positioned between every bite to reinforce the annuloplasty as proposed by Antunes and Cardwood in 1983. This is the modified Divaga procedure, so we can place multiple pressures along this direction of the sutures that will further strengthen the repair technique. Ring annuloplasty. The idea of a prosthetic annuloplasty ring in the tricuspid annulus was first introduced by Carpentier in 1971. Rigid or semi-rigid ring has been designed to fix the annulus during the systole, restoring the physiological geometry of the valve, while flexible ones may be used as well to reduce the annular dilatation, but fail to restore the 3D three-dimensional morphology. The right side of the ring is chosen by measuring the distance between the anteroseptal and the posterior septal commissure, that is the surface of the anterior leaflet, and the ring is then implanted using 8 to 10 20-trichrome cystices starting posteriorly at the midpoint of the septal leaflet and then proceeding counterclockwise. The surgeon must pay attention during the placement of the stitches not to damage the conduction system and to avoid aortic root at the level of the septal and anterior leaflet respectively. The last stitch is placed above the anteroseptal commissure and the ring is finally parachuted and fixed. Sometimes enlargement of the anterior leaflet is necessary when it is very much reduced in size or it is very much damaged or maybe fibrosed. In that case, enlargement of the anterior leaflet is required to make it further competent. Sometimes an isolated annuloplasty is not sufficient to correct the disease, especially in case of severe tethering. As a consequence, in 2008, Dreyfus et al. Proposed the enlargement of the anterior leaflet to solve this problem. After removing the native anterior leaflet or part of the anterior leaflet, a piece of the autologous pericardium is prepared by measuring the length at the distance between the anteroseptal and the anteroposterior commissures, whereas the height as the greatest distance between the detached leaflet and the annulus. Finally, the base is sutured with a polypropylene 50 suture to the annulus and a semi-rigid annuloplasty ring is implanted. This makes it functionally competent valve. There is another technique which is a very simplified technique known as Clover technique. In 2003, Alfieri et al. Presented another technique for the correction of severe functional tricuspid insufficiency. In case of important tethering, it consists of stitching together the middle point of the free edges of the tricuspid leaflets by using a 50 polypropylene suture without placets and adding a semi-rigid ring. At this point, the valve becomes clover shaped, so this technique has been called the Clover technique. It was first introduced for the treatment of post-traumatic tricuspid regurgitation, while later become effective even in complex cases both of primary and secondary tricuspid regurgitation. The cone reconstruction, Dr. Da Silva and co-workers, they invented this procedure, and it is different from the previous valvuloplasty technique in that it is closest to an anatomic repair. All the valve tissue is utilized to repair the tricuspid valve. The end result of the, so this is also called anatomic repair. The end result of the cone reconstruction includes 360 degree of the tricuspid leaflet tissue surrounding the right atrioventricular junction. This allows leaflet tissue to co-opt with the leaflet tissue, similar to that occurs with normal tricuspid valve anatomy. In addition, the reconstructed tricuspid valve is reattached to the true tricuspid valve annulus, that is the atrioventricular junction, so that the hinge point of the valve is now in a normal anatomic position. Thin and transparent atrialized right ventricle is plicated, so any areas of right ventricular dyskinesis are eliminated. You see from this figure that excepting the this septal leaflet area, rest of the leaflet of the tricuspid valve is detached from the annulus, and this edge is then sutured to the posterior margin of the septal leaflet. Sometimes the septal leaflet is very much diminished in size. Even in that case, we can use a suture to reconstruct the tricuspid valve leaflet. And then this atrialized portion of the right ventricle is plicated by multiple sutures. And sometimes the annulus is reduced by putting K stitches. Then this annulus, this leaflet margin is reattached to the newly reconstructed annulus to make it competent. So this is the K stitches to reduce the annular size. This makes the valve almost like a normal valve. This is the attached posterior leaflet to the septal leaflet. So it makes the valve functionally almost like a normal valve. Sometimes when the leaflet tissue is very much thinned out, it's not possible to do bone repair. In that case, tricuspid valve replacement is necessary. Prosthetic tricuspid valve replacement is the treatment of enlarged annulus when valve repair is not feasible, particularly in older patients and those with massive right ventricular or tricuspid annular dilatation. Bioprosthetic or porcine valve replacement is generally preferred to mechanical valve replacement because of relatively good durability of the porcine bioprosthesis in tricuspid position and the lack of need for chronic anticoagulation, warfarin anticoagulation. Improved function of bioprosthesis in this population may be related to the relatively larger size of bioprosthesis, so there is less wear and tear, which can be implanted relatively to the patient size. A relatively adequate or a very large size valve can be used, and to the normal to low right ventricular systolic pressure after repair in patient with enlarged annulus. Both of these factors would tend to reduce turbulence and stress on the bioprosthesis. Valve-in-valve insertion may be a feasible option in patient with tricuspid bioprosthetic valve dysfunction. So, if there is bioprosthetic dysfunction, we can dilate the valve or put a valve in valve by transcatheter route. Importantly, mechanical valves should be avoided when there is significant right ventricular dysfunction because the disc motion may not be normal, resulting in a greater propensity of the valve thrombosis. So it's most likely to undergo thrombosis, and even in the presence of therapeutic warfarin anticoagulation. And we need a very high dose of warfarin. The INR is usually kept around 3 to 3.5, sometimes 4 even. So that gives most anticoagulant related complications like even intracranial hemorrhage, bleeding disorder, etc. For adult patients who are chronically taking warfarin anticoagulation for other reasons and who want to potentially minimize the need for a subsequent reoperation for bioprosthetic deterioration, in that case only a mechanical valve can be considered, but RV function must be well preserved. So there are two techniques to avoid injury to the conduction bundle and the RCA. So here in the at the level of the triangle of cause, there is chance of injury to the AV node and bundle of His. So in that case, the sutures may be placed a little bit towards the ventricular side of the annulus in the septal area, so that it doesn't injure the AV node or bundle of His. And the rest of the placets can be placed on the atrial side of the annulus, uh, so that can protect the AV bundle. And sometimes it's not possible to get enough space between the uh, AV node and the bundle of His and the annulus of the tricuspid valve. In that case, we may go away from the true annulus to the atrial wall by placing stitches, and can put a uh, tricuspid valve there, so that the AV node, bundle of His, and the coronary sinus goes inside the right ventricle. It doesn't cause much problem because the coronary sinus is ultimately the blood is going to the right ventricle. So in these two ways, we can protect the conduction bundle, and the right coronary artery will have to be very careful about putting stitches on this aspect, because here the right coronary artery goes, and it should not be very much deep so that it can injure the right coronary artery. So this is all about the tricuspid valve treatment. I think it would be useful for all of you. Thank you very much.